When I collapsed in the hallway of Rosewood Nursing Home, the doctors said my heart had simply grown tired. I suppose they were being kind. Hearts don't just get tired, do they? They break. They crack under the weight of carrying too much for too long. Mine had carried 67 years of worry, sacrifice, and love that I poured out like water from a pitcher that never got refilled. But lying there on that cold linoleum floor, staring up at the ceiling tiles with their little brown water stains, I didn't think about my heart. I thought about Frank, my son, the boy I'd raised alone after his father walked out when he was 3, the man who promised he'd always be there for me. The world tilted sideways, voices echoing like I was underwater. Someone pressed something cold against my wrist. A woman's face appeared above me, her lips moving, but the words took a moment to reach my ears. "Ma'am, can you hear me? We're calling an ambulance. Who should we contact?" My mouth answered before my brain could catch up. "Frank," I whispered. "Call Frank. He's my emergency contact." They did. And you know what? He never came. Before I go any further, let me ask you something. Wherever you are right now, listening to this story, I want you to do me a favor. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from and what time it is in your part of the world. Are you listening to this at midnight, unable to sleep? Or maybe it's morning and you're having your coffee. I'd love to know. And if this story touches something in you, hit that like button, share it with someone who might need to hear it, and subscribe because, believe me, what comes next is something you won't want to miss. Now, where was I? Oh yes, the ambulance. The sirens wailed as they loaded me onto the stretcher. I remember the sterile light above me in that ambulance, so bright it hurt my eyes. A young paramedic, couldn't have been more than 25, kept asking me questions. My name, my age, if I was on any medications. "Is someone meeting you at the hospital?" he asked gently. "My son," I said, my voice barely a whisper. They called him. He nodded and gave me a smile that I recognized. It was the smile people give when they want to be reassuring but don't actually believe what you're saying. I'd given that same smile to parents at the school where I'd worked for 30 years as a secretary. The smile that says, "I hope you're right, but I'm preparing for disappointment." The hospital was chaos, wrapped in calm. Doctors and nurses moved with practiced efficiency, hooking me up to machines that beeped and hummed. Wires traced the outline of a life I'd once lived for everyone but myself. An IV needle slid into my arm, and I watched my blood pulse backward into the tube before the clear liquid started flowing in. A nurse with kind eyes adjusted my pillow. "Your doctor will be in shortly," she said. "Is your family on the way?" "Yes," I said, because what else could I say? That I wasn't sure, that Frank had stopped answering my calls weeks ago? That the last time I'd seen my grandchildren was in a photo someone else posted online? No, you don't say those things out loud. Not when you're 67 and lying in a hospital bed with your heart giving out. You protect your children, even when they forget to protect you. For 2 days, I lay in that hospital bed, staring at the wall clock. The hands moved in slow circles, ticking toward visiting hours that never brought a familiar face. Other patients had rooms that overflowed with flowers, balloons, teddy bears, clutching hearts that said, "Get well soon." Their families crowded around beds, laughing too loud. Bringing in food the nurses pretended not to see. My room stayed empty. The first night, I told myself he was busy. Frank ran a real estate company with his wife, Danielle. They had 2 kids in private school. Life was complicated. He'd come tomorrow. The second night, I started making excuses that even I didn't believe. Maybe he didn't get the message. Maybe his phone died. Maybe he was stuck at work and couldn't leave. Maybe. But deep down, in that place where the truth lives even when we try to bury it, I knew he wasn't coming. On the 3rd morning, when the nurse wheeled in my phone from the belongings locker, I thought maybe there'd be a text, an explanation. Something to fill the hollow space that was growing in my chest, worse than anything the heart monitor could measure. My hands shook as I picked up the phone. The screen lit up, notifications stacked like accusations. But the first thing I saw wasn't a message from Frank. It was a notification from Facebook. "You've been tagged in a post." I should have known better than to click it. Some part of me, the part that still remembered how to protect herself, whispered, "Don't look. Just put the phone down." But I looked anyway. And that's when everything changed. The photo loaded slowly, pixel by pixel, like my phone was giving me one last chance to look away. I didn't take it. There they were, my family. Frank stood on the left, his arm around Danielle's waist. She wore that smile she always reserved for cameras, the one that never quite reached her eyes but photographed beautifully. My grandchildren, Emma and Tyler, sat cross-legged on a picnic blanket, ice cream cones in their hands, faces bright with laughter. Behind them, a park I recognized. The one near their house, the one with the duck pond where I used to take Frank when he was small. We'd bring stale bread and watch the ducks fight over the pieces, and he'd laugh so hard his whole body would shake. That was a lifetime ago. I scrolled down to read the caption, though something in my gut already knew what it would say. Family day without the drama. Sometimes peace is found in the people who choose to show up. I read it once, then twice, then a third time, until the words stopped being words and became just shapes on a screen, meaningless and cruel all at once. The nurse thought my IV drip had made me dizzy when she walked in and found me staring at nothing. "Mrs. Collins, are you all right? You look pale." "I'm fine," I said, which is what you say when fine is the furthest thing from the truth. She didn't believe me. I could tell by the way she lingered, checking my vitals twice, adjusting the blanket I hadn't asked her to touch. But she was kind enough not to push, and I was grateful for that. Some pain doesn't need witnesses. After she left, I looked at the photo again. This time, I noticed the small details. The timestamp. Yesterday, 2:47 inches the afternoon. Right around the time I was being moved from emergency to the cardiac unit, doctors discussing whether my heart could handle another episode. I zoomed in on Emma's face. She was 8 now, gap-toothed and beautiful. Tyler had just turned 11, all elbows and knees like his father used to be. They looked happy. Genuinely, purely happy. And why shouldn't they be? They didn't know their grandmother was 3 miles away, alone in a hospital room, wondering why the people she'd loved most had become strangers who occasionally remembered she existed. I clicked on Danielle's profile, something I rarely did. Her life unfolded in carefully curated squares. Morning coffee with motivational quotes. Family dinners with candles and cloth napkins. Photos of the kids' school achievements, their soccer games, their birthday parties. I scrolled back through months of memories. There I was, sometimes, in the background of a Thanksgiving photo, blurry and out of focus. Tagged in a Mother's Day post with a generic message. Grateful for the strong women in our lives. But mostly, I was absent, edited out, cropped from the frame of their perfect life. The drama, she'd called me. That word sat in my chest like a stone. What drama had I caused? Asking to see my grandchildren more than twice a year? Calling on Frank's birthday to sing to him? Wondering why he'd stopped visiting the nursing home, stopped answering texts, stopped pretending I mattered? If needing your family makes you dramatic, then every mother in a nursing home must be a theater production. I set the phone face down on the bedside table, but that didn't make the image go away. It burned behind my eyes. I could see it when I blinked. That caption, those words, the casual cruelty of being reduced to a problem they'd solved by simply not inviting me. Hours passed. The machines kept beeping their steady rhythm, counting heartbeats. I wasn't sure I wanted to keep counting. A different nurse brought dinner, some kind of soup that smelled like nothing and tasted like less. I ate 3 spoonfuls before pushing it away. "Not hungry?" she asked. "Not really. Would you like me to call someone for you? Family? A friend?" I almost laughed. Almost. "No, thank you. There's no one to call." She gave me that look, the one everyone gives people like me. Pity mixed with relief that they're not in my place. Then she took the tray and left, her shoes squeaking against the floor. As the sun set outside my window, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, I picked up my phone one more time. The notification was still there, mocking me with its cheerful little icon. I could delete it, untag myself, pretend I'd never seen it. But that felt like lying, and I was tired of lying. tired of pretending everything was okay, tired of making excuses for people who never bothered making time. Instead, I just stared at that photo until the light faded and the room went dark around me. The family I'd given everything to, smiling without me, breathing easier without me, living better without me. And somewhere between the darkness and the steady beep of the heart monitor, something inside me shifted. Not broke, exactly. Breaking implies something violent, sudden, loud. This was quieter, like a door closing, like a hand finally letting go of something it had held too tightly for too long. I realized love doesn't always die. Sometimes it just deletes you. Sleep didn't come that night. How could it, when my mind kept pulling me backward through years I'd tried so hard to remember fondly? I used to love Sundays. There was a time, right after I moved into Rosewood, when Frank would show up every Sunday at 2 o'clock. I could set my watch by him. He'd walk through the door with the kids trailing behind, Emma clutching a bunch of daisies from the grocery store, Tyler holding a card he'd made in art class. Those visits felt like oxygen. We'd sit in the common room, the one with the large windows overlooking the courtyard. Emma would curl up next to me and tell me about school, about her friends, about the hamster in her classroom that kept escaping its cage. Tyler was quieter, but he'd show me his drawings, detailed sketches of superheroes and spaceships that always amazed me. Frank would update me on work, on the house, on all the little mundane details that made me feel like I was still part of something, still connected, still family. I lived for those Sundays. Then Danielle started coming along, and slowly, something shifted. She never said anything outright. That wasn't her style. She was too smart for that, too careful. Instead, it was the small things. The way she'd check her phone constantly, scrolling through messages with an urgency that suggested anywhere else was better than here. The way she'd glance at her watch and say, "Frank, we really should get going. The kids have homework." At 3:30. Every time. Like she'd set an invisible timer for how long they could tolerate my company. "Already?" Frank would say, but he never argued. Never said, "Let's stay a little longer. Mom looks forward to this." He'd just stand up, gather the kids, kiss my forehead, and promise to see me next week. Next week became next Sunday. Then it became every other Sunday. Then once a month. Then only on holidays. The excuses were always reasonable. Soccer practice, birthday parties, dance recitals, Danielle's book club, a work conference. The kids were tired. The car needed maintenance. Someone had a cold. I understood. Life gets busy. Children have activities. Couples need their time. But understanding didn't make the empty Sundays any easier. I'd sit in that same spot by the window, watching other residents greet their families, and I'd tell myself Frank would come next week. He was just overwhelmed. He'd make it up to me. The other residents at Rosewood became my calendar. Mrs. Patterson's daughter visited every Tuesday with fresh cookies. Mr. Hernandez's son came twice a week, sometimes more. Even old Dorothy, who could barely remember her own name, had grandchildren who rotated visits like clockwork. And then there was me, making excuses to strangers about why my family didn't come. "Oh, they're so busy." I'd say, smiling like it didn't hurt, "My son runs his own company, you know. And the grandkids have so many activities these days. Not like when we were young." People were kind enough to nod, but I saw it in their eyes. That flicker of something. Doubt, maybe. Or worse, recognition. Because Rosewood was full of people like me. People whose children got busy, whose families got distant, whose love got convenient. The nursing home staff turned over faster than residents got visitors. I learned not to get attached to the aides, the nurses, the people who wheeled in meals and checked blood pressure. They'd learn my name, ask about my family, and before I could finish telling them about Emma's piano recital, they'd quit and someone new would start the next week. But I kept Frank's photo on my nightstand, the one from his college graduation, cap tilted slightly to the side, diploma in hand, that wide smile that made my whole world make sense. I'd raised him alone. His father left before Frank's 4th birthday, disappeared like morning fog, leaving me with a mortgage, a toddler, and no backup plan. I'd worked 3 decades as a secretary at Riverside Elementary. The pay was modest, but it was steady. Every dollar I earned had a purpose: shoes for Frank's growing feet, school supplies, basketball camp, the used car he needed for his first job, the deposit on his first apartment when the landlord wanted twice what I'd saved. I never said no, even when saying yes meant eating rice and beans for 2 weeks straight, even when it meant skipping the dentist because Frank needed new tires. Even when it meant selling the house I'd finally paid off so I could move into Rosewood and not be a burden. That's what I told myself, that I was making it easier for him, giving him space to build his own life, raise his own family, succeed without worrying about his aging mother in a house that was too big for one person. The irony wasn't lost on me now. I'd made myself so easy to forget that he actually forgot. I thought about my mother, how I'd visited her every week when she was in a home similar to this one, how I'd bring her favorite magazines, update her on Frank's childhood, hold her hand while we watched old game shows. She died knowing she was loved. She died surrounded by family. I wondered if I'd have the same blessing, or if I'd slip away one quiet afternoon while Frank was at a business lunch and Danielle was posting about gratitude. The truly painful part wasn't the absence. It was the realization that I'd trained him for this. I'd spent his entire childhood teaching him that mother's love was infinite, unconditional, and required nothing in return. I'd never asked for help, never complained, never made him feel guilty. I'd raised him to believe I'd always be fine, always be waiting, always be there whenever he had time to remember me. Maybe I raised a good man, just not a grateful one. Morning came with the sound of breakfast trays rattling down the hallway. I hadn't slept, not really. Just drifted in and out of that strange space between consciousness and dreams, where memories feel more real than the present. The nurse who came in was different from the others. Her badge said Lisa, and she moved with the kind of gentle confidence that comes from actually caring about the job, not just collecting a paycheck. "Good morning, Mrs. Collins," she said, setting down a tray with oatmeal and weak tea. "How are we feeling today?" The question hung in the air between us. How was I feeling? Like I'd spent 67 years building a bridge to nowhere, like every sacrifice I'd made had been written on paper that dissolved in water. Like I was finally understanding the difference between being loved and being useful. "I'm fine," I said, which was becoming my default answer to everything. Lisa tilted her head slightly, studying me with eyes that had probably seen through 1,000 lies just like mine. She pulled up the chair that no visitor had used and sat down. Not hovering over me like doctors did, but settling in like she had time. "You know," she said quietly, "I've worked here 3 years. I've learned that when someone says they're fine in that particular tone, they're usually anything but." I tried to smile, but my face wouldn't cooperate. "I appreciate your concern, but really, I'm okay." "No family yet?" Those 3 words shouldn't have hurt as much as they did. "They're busy." Lisa nodded slowly. She didn't offer platitudes or false comfort. She just reached over and adjusted my blanket, a small gesture that felt more genuine than any of Frank's promises. "If you need anything, anything at all, you press that button. Even if it's just to talk." After she left, I reached for my phone. I don't know what I was hoping to find. Maybe a missed call that hadn't come through. Maybe a text that explained everything. Maybe proof that I mattered, even just a little. Instead, I found myself scrolling through old messages, reading back through months of conversations that told their own story. December 25th, Christmas morning. I'd sent, "Merry Christmas, sweetheart. Hope you and the family are having a beautiful day. Love you." His reply 6 hours later, "Thanks, Mom. Crazy busy here. Talk soon." November, Thanksgiving. My message, "Happy Thanksgiving, Frank. I'm so thankful for you and the kids. Wish I could be there." Him, "Happy Thanksgiving. Danielle's family is here. House is packed." October, my birthday. Me, "Thank you for the card, honey. It was lovely. Would love to see you all soon." Him, "We'll try to swing by next month." They never did. I kept scrolling, watching the pattern repeat itself like a script we'd both memorized. My messages were long, full of news about Rosewood, questions about the grandchildren, updates on my health. His responses were brief, polite, distant. The kind of texts you send to an acquaintance, not your mother. There was one from April that stopped me cold. I'd sent him an article about heart health, something I'd read in the common room. Not because I was worried, just because I thought he'd find it interesting. I'd written, "Saw this and thought of you. Take care of yourself, sweetheart. We're not getting any younger." He'd responded with a thumbs up emoji. Nothing else, just a single digital gesture that took half a second of his time. That's what I'd become. Worth a thumbs up. I put the phone down and stared at the ceiling. The water stains looked like continents if you looked at them long enough. Little worlds contained in damaged plaster, maps to places I'd never visit. When had it started? When had I stopped being mom and started being an obligation? Was it when I moved into Rosewood? Was it when Danielle entered the picture? Or had it been gradual, so slow I didn't notice the distance growing until I was standing on one side of a canyon with no bridge back? The truth settled over me like a weight. It wasn't sudden. It wasn't any one moment. It was 1,000 tiny moments where he chose something else, someone else, anywhere else. And I'd let him. I'd made it easy by never complaining, never demanding, never expecting more than he was willing to give. I'd been so afraid of being the difficult mother, the needy one, the burden, that I'd asked for nothing until nothing was exactly what I got. Lisa came back later that afternoon to check my vitals. "Your heart rate is better today," she said, wrapping the blood pressure cuff around my arm. "That's good," I replied automatically. "Mrs. Collins, can I ask you something?" I nodded. "Do you have any friends here, people you talk to besides staff?" The question surprised me. "A few. Mrs. Hernandez and I play cards sometimes." "Why?" Lisa paused, choosing her words carefully. "Sometimes the people who end up alone aren't alone because nobody loves them. They're alone because they spent so much time loving everyone else that they forgot to notice who wasn't loving them back." Her words hit like a diagnosis more accurate than anything the doctors had given me. I felt my throat tighten, but I refused to cry. Not again. Not over people who weren't crying over me. "Thank you, Lisa," I whispered. She squeezed my hand once before leaving, and in that moment, a stranger showed me more kindness than my son had in years. That night, I lay awake thinking about her words, about love and reciprocity, about the difference between giving and being taken from, about how many years I'd spent waiting for someone to choose me the way I'd always chosen them. Maybe peace doesn't come from being loved. Maybe it comes from finally noticing who doesn't. I woke on the 5th morning to a sound I hadn't heard in months. My phone was buzzing. Not just once or twice, but continuously, vibrating against the metal bedside table like an angry hornet trapped in a jar. The noise pulled me from the thin sleep I'd finally managed to find, and for a moment, I was disoriented, unsure if I was dreaming. Then I saw the screen. 53 missed calls. My heart, the same one that had brought me to this hospital bed, started racing. 53 calls. Something was wrong. Something terrible must have happened. Was it Emma? Tyler? Had there been an accident? A fire? My hands shook as I grabbed the phone, barely able to hold it steady enough to unlock the screen. The call log filled with Frank's name, over and over, time-stamped throughout the night. 3:17 a.m., 3:45 a.m., 4:02 a.m., 4:33 a.m. The calls kept coming, desperate and relentless. Below the missed calls was a text message sent at 5:47 inches the morning. "Mom, where are you? It's an emergency." Fear shot through me like electricity. An emergency. My mind raced through possibilities, each one worse than the last. The kids. It had to be the kids. Nothing else would make him call like this, text like this, need me like this. My finger hovered over the callback button. Every instinct I'd honed over decades of motherhood screamed at me to call him immediately, to find out what was wrong, to fix it, whatever it was, because that's what mothers do. But something made me pause. It was 6:15 inches the morning now. If something had truly happened to the children, if there was a real crisis, wouldn't he have called the hospital? Wouldn't he have tracked me down through Rosewood? Wouldn't he have shown up? I lowered the phone and took a breath, trying to calm the panic flooding my system. "Think," I told myself. "Think before you react." That's when I noticed the time of his first text. 5:47 a.m. Right around the time Danielle usually posted her morning routine on social media. Her carefully filtered coffee cups, her motivational quotes, her staged breakfast table with the kids eating organic granola. Almost without thinking, I opened Facebook, scrolled through my feed, and there it was. A local news article, shared by several people in the Rosewood community group. Local real estate company files for bankruptcy amid housing market collapse. My eyes scanned the article, my brain struggling to process the words. Franklin Property Solutions, the company Frank and Danielle had built together, was shutting down. The article mentioned failed developments, over-leveraged properties, investors pulling out. It mentioned lawsuits, financial ruin, assets being seized. I sat there, phone in hand, as the pieces clicked into place. 53 missed calls. Not because anyone was hurt. Not because anyone needed comfort or support or love. Not because I was someone's mother who deserved to know her family was safe. 53 missed calls because their business had collapsed and they needed money. The emergency wasn't Emma falling off her bike or Tyler breaking his arm. The emergency was that their perfect life, their carefully constructed success story, their house with the mortgage I'd been quietly helping pay, was crumbling. And suddenly, after days of silence, after that cruel social media post, after years of forgotten Sundays and ignored birthdays, now I was worth 53 phone calls. I set the phone down carefully, like it might explode if I moved too quickly. My hands were steady now. The shaking had stopped. In its place was something else, something cold and clarifying. Lisa came in for her morning rounds and found me sitting up in bed, staring at nothing. "Mrs. Collins? Are you all right? You look like you've seen a ghost." I turned to her slowly. "Do you know what I just realized?" "What's that?" "I've been in this hospital for 5 days. 5 days. My son didn't visit, didn't call, didn't even send a text to see if I was alive. But his business goes under and suddenly my phone won't stop ringing." Lisa's expression shifted, understanding mixed with sadness. "I'm sorry." "Don't be," I said, and I meant it. I needed to see this. I needed to understand what I actually am to him. She didn't ask what I meant. She didn't need to. After she left, I picked up my phone again and looked at those 53 missed calls. Looked at that text. It's an emergency. For him, it was. For them, their world was falling apart and they needed their safety net. The safety net they'd stored in a nursing home and forgotten about until the moment they started falling. I thought about all the times I'd answered on the first ring, all the times I'd said yes before he finished asking, all the times I'd transferred money, co-signed loans, covered expenses because family helps family. But help goes both ways, doesn't it? Or at least it should. I opened my messages and stared at Frank's text. My thumbs hovered over the keyboard. Part of me, the part that had spent a lifetime being his mother, wanted to call him back. Wanted to ask what he needed. Wanted to fix it. But a newer part, a part that was just beginning to wake up after years of sleep, whispered something different. I locked my phone without responding. Let him wonder where I was for once. Let him feel what it's like to need someone who doesn't answer. Let him understand, just for a moment, what these past 5 days had felt like for me. So that's what my love was worth. A mortgage payment. The phone kept buzzing throughout the day. I watched it light up like a Christmas tree, Frank's name appearing again and again. Then Danielle started calling, then Frank again. Then texts started rolling in, each one more desperate than the last. "Mom, please. I know you're upset, but this is serious. We need to talk. It's urgent." "Mom, don't do this. Not now." I left every single one unread. The doctors came by in the afternoon to tell me my heart was stabilizing. They seemed pleased with my progress, talking about discharge plans and follow-up appointments. I nodded at the appropriate times, signed the forms they needed, smiled when they said I was doing remarkably well for someone who'd had such a scare. But I wasn't thinking about my heart. I was thinking about the past 30 years and all the ways I'd given pieces of myself away until there was almost nothing left. Lisa brought dinner around 6. Baked chicken that tasted like cardboard and green beans that had been cooked into submission. I picked at it while she updated my chart. "Your son still hasn't come by," she said quietly. It wasn't a question. "No," I replied, "but he's called quite a bit today." "That's good, isn't it? Maybe he's been trying to get here." I looked up at her. Sweet Lisa, still young enough to believe the best in people. "He doesn't want to visit. He wants money." Her pen stopped moving. "Oh. It's fine," I said, though we both knew it wasn't. "I'm just starting to see things clearly for the first time in a very long time." After she left, I did something I hadn't done in years. I let myself really think about all the times I'd said yes when I should have said no. It started small, like these things always do. Frank needed help with rent during college. "Just 1 month," he'd said. I sent 3. He needed a car for his new job. "Just a loan," he'd promised. I ended up paying it off completely when he said the interest was killing him. Then came the business. Frank and Danielle wanted to start their real estate company, and they needed startup capital. I took out a loan against my house. My home, the one I'd spent 25 years paying off, one mortgage payment at a time on a secretary's salary. "We'll pay you back as soon as the first deals close," Frank had assured me, his eyes bright with dreams of success. "This is going to change everything for our family, Mom. You'll see." I never saw a penny of it back. But that was okay, I'd told myself. Parents invest in their children's futures. That's what love looks like. Sacrifice. Then came the school fees for Emma and Tyler. Private school, because public school wasn't good enough for Danielle's standards. Could I help with tuition? Just until the business picked up? The business picked up. The tuition payments didn't stop. Then it was the vacation they couldn't quite afford, but the kids really needed. Then the kitchen renovation. Then the new car, because Danielle's old one was embarrassing. Then, and somewhere in all those thens, I'd sold my house and moved into Rosewood. Not because I wanted to, but because I couldn't afford to keep it anymore. All my equity, all my savings, all the money I'd tucked away for my own old age had slowly drained into Frank's life like water into sand. "You'll be happier at Rosewood," he'd said, not quite meeting my eyes. "You'll have people around, activities. It'll be good for you." What he meant was, it'll be easier for me. The memory that haunted me most happened on a Tuesday afternoon, 3 years ago. Frank had come to visit, which was unusual for a weekday. He'd brought papers, spread them out on the little table in my room at Rosewood. "Mom, I need you to sign these," he'd said. "It's just paperwork to add me to your bank accounts, you know, in case of emergency. So I can help manage things if you get sick or confused." I should have asked questions, should have read the fine print, should have wondered why the emergency planning suddenly felt so urgent. But I'd trusted him. He was my son, my only family. Why would he do anything that wasn't in my best interest? I signed everything he put in front of me. Joint accounts, shared access, power of attorney, all of it designed to make it easier for him to help me, he'd said. What it actually did was make it easier for him to help himself. I started noticing the transfers a few months later. Small at first. 100 here, 200 there. Then larger amounts, mortgage payments, utility bills, school expenses. All pulling directly from my accounts, automatic withdrawals I'd never authorized, but couldn't stop because his name was on everything. When I'd asked him about it, he'd seemed annoyed that I'd even noticed. "Mom, we talked about this. You said you wanted to help with the grandkids. This is just easier than you having to write checks all the time." Had we talked about it? I couldn't remember. Maybe we had. Maybe I'd agreed and forgotten. I was getting older after all. Maybe my memory wasn't what it used to be. That's what he'd counted on. My age, my trust, my love, my inability to say no to him. Now, lying in this hospital bed, I saw it all so clearly it almost hurt to look at. I hadn't been helping Frank build a life. I'd been funding one while he built walls between us. Every dollar I gave him was another brick in the wall that kept him away. He didn't need to visit because he didn't need to ask for anything anymore. It was already his. The phone buzzed again. Another text from Danielle this time. "We know you're seeing these messages. This is childish. Frank's business is failing and we need to discuss options. Call us back immediately." Childish. That word made me smile, though there was no humor in it. Wanting your son to visit you in the hospital is childish, but calling your mother 53 times because you need her money is mature responsibility. I set the phone down and stared out the window at the parking lot below. Cars came and went, people visiting their loved ones, bringing flowers and balloons and all the small gestures that say, "You matter." My window stayed dark. If they can sleep peacefully after forgetting me, then I can live peacefully after remembering that. The next morning, when Lisa came in with breakfast, I asked her something I'd never asked before. "Is there any way I could get a laptop? Just for a few hours?" She looked surprised. Most of the patients here didn't ask for technology beyond their phones. "I think we have one at the nurse's station you could borrow. What do you need it for?" "Just some personal business I need to take care of." 20 minutes later, she wheeled in a cart with a hospital laptop, the kind they usually used for patient education videos. She helped me get settled, adjusting the bed so I could sit up comfortably, positioning the rolling table so the laptop was at the right height. "Take your time," she said. "Just call if you need anything." After she left, I stared at the login screen for a long moment. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, and I realized they weren't shaking anymore. The trembling uncertainty from the past few days had been replaced with something steadier, something that felt almost like strength. I opened the browser and navigated to my bank's website. The username and password came back to me easily. I'd set up online banking years ago, back when I was still working, still independent, still believed I'd grow old in my own home surrounded by my own things. The account loaded slowly, and when the numbers appeared on screen, I felt something twist in my chest. My checking account, the one I'd maintained since 1983, showed a balance of $842. That was what remained of 40 years of work, of careful saving, of sacrifice. I clicked on the transaction history. The list scrolled down the screen like an autopsy report, each line documenting exactly how my life had been bled dry. Automatic transfer to Franklin Property Solutions for mortgage. Automatic payment to Westfield Academy for tuition. Automatic transfer to Frank Collins for utilities. Automatic. I'd authorized none of them recently, but I didn't need to. Frank's name on the account meant he could do whatever he wanted. And he had... I scrolled back further. 6 months, a year, 2 years. The pattern was consistent. Every month, like clockwork, money flowed from my account into his life. Some months it was $500, some months it was $3,000. It depended on what he needed, apparently, and whether he bothered to mention it to me. Most of the time, he didn't. I opened a new tab and logged into my savings account, the one I'd started when Frank was born, the one I'd promised myself would be my safety net, my retirement, my cushion for medical emergencies and end-of-life care. The balance was $12,000 and change. It should have been closer to $90,000. I'd calculated it once, years ago, before I moved to Rosewood. Between my pension, Social Security, and what I'd saved, I should have been comfortable. Not wealthy, but secure. But the transaction history told a different story. A withdrawal here for a business emergency, a transfer there for an investment opportunity. A loan Frank had needed desperately, promised to repay, and never mentioned again. I'd given it willingly, mostly, signed the forms he'd brought, authorized the transfers he'd said were urgent, trusted him when he said it was temporary. But trust is only beautiful when it's not abused. I leaned back against the pillows, feeling the weight of what I was seeing. This wasn't just about money. Money was just paper, numbers on a screen, something that came and went. This was about the fact that my son had looked at me and seen an ATM, a resource to be managed, a problem to be solved by keeping me fed and housed in a place where I couldn't ask too many questions. The phone on the bedside table buzzed again. I didn't even glance at it. Instead, I clicked on Account Settings, found the option for joint account holders, hovered my cursor over Frank's name. It would be so easy. One click. Remove authorized user. Confirm change. But I didn't move. Not yet. I opened another tab. My retirement account, the one from my years at Riverside Elementary. The school district had set up a modest pension plan. Nothing fancy, but it had grown over 30 years. This one, at least, only had my name on it. Or it should have. I logged in and felt my stomach drop. Beneficiary, Frank Collins. Power of attorney, Frank Collins. Emergency contact, Frank Collins. Of course. I remembered signing those papers too. Different day, same story. Just in case something happens, Mom. Just to make things easier. You know how complicated estate stuff can be. I'd been so proud of him for thinking ahead, for being responsible, for caring about my future. What I hadn't realized was that he was actually securing his own. The hospital room suddenly felt very small, very quiet. The machines beeped their steady rhythm, counting down a life that someone else had already spent on my behalf. I thought about calling him, asking him to explain, giving him a chance to tell me why he'd done this, how it had gotten this far, whether he ever felt guilty. But I knew what he'd say. The same thing he always said. He needed help. Business was tough. The kids were expensive. Danielle had expectations. Times were hard. Just temporary. Just this once. Just a little more. Just. No more. I pulled up the bank's customer service number and dialed from the laptop's internet phone feature. A representative answered on the third ring. First National Bank, this is Rebecca. How may I help you? Hello, Rebecca. My name is Eleanor Collins. I need to make some changes to my accounts. Of course, Mrs. Collins. Can you verify your account number and date of birth for me? I rattled off the information, my voice steady and clear. Thank you. What changes would you like to make today? I need to remove someone from my joint accounts. My son, his name is Franklin Collins. There was a pause, the sound of typing. I see him listed here as a joint account holder. Just to confirm, you want to remove his access completely? Yes, completely. May I ask if there's a particular reason? Sometimes families find it helpful to maintain joint access for emergencies. I almost laughed. The emergency is why I'm calling. More typing. I understand. I'll need to process this as a formal request. Since he's a joint holder, this will effectively close the current accounts and open new ones in your name only. The funds will transfer over, but he'll no longer have any access or visibility. Is that what you'd like? Yes, exactly that. And your savings account as well? Everything. Every account with his name on it. Rebecca's voice softened slightly, and I wondered how many calls like this she took, how many elderly parents finally woke up to what their children had been doing. I can start that process now. You'll need to provide electronic signature authorization. The changes should take effect within 24 to 48 hours. That's perfect. She walked me through the steps, patient and professional. When we finished, she said something that surprised me. Mrs. Collins, good for you. I hope everything works out. Thank you, Rebecca. I think it already has. After I hung up, I sat there staring at the confirmation email that popped into my inbox. Account closure in progress. New accounts being established. Estimated completion time. It was done. Not out of anger. Not out of revenge. Not yet. Out of mercy for myself. I closed the laptop and pressed the call button. Lisa appeared a few minutes later. All done? She asked. Yes, I said. All done. She took the laptop away, and I lay back against the pillows, feeling lighter than I had in years. Outside my window, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. My phone buzzed one more time. A text from Frank. Mom, the bank called. What did you do? Why would you close our accounts? Call me now. I picked up the phone, read the message once, and then powered it off completely. Mercy doesn't mean staying poor in spirit. Sometimes it means clicking close account. I kept the phone off for 3 hours. In that time, I slept better than I had in days. When I finally turned it back on, the screen lit up with notifications that would have terrified me a week ago. Now they just felt inevitable. 67 text messages, 21 voicemails, 15 missed calls. I started reading from the top. The first few messages from Frank were confused. Mom, what's going on? The bank won't let me access the account. There must be some mistake. Call me when you get this." Then they shifted to concern, or at least what he probably thought looked like concern. "Mom, I'm worried. Are you okay? Did someone convince you to do something?" Sometimes people in hospitals get confused. "Please call me so we can fix this." I had to smile at that one. Confused, as if clarity was confusion and blindness was sight. The messages continued, timestamps showing his growing desperation as the reality of what I'd done sank in. "Mom, this isn't funny. We have bills due. The mortgage company is calling. You can't just cut us off like this without warning. Do you understand what you're doing? We're going to lose everything. The house, the kids' school, everything we've built." Built? That was an interesting word choice. Built with what materials, I wondered. Oh yes, with my money, my sacrifice, my unwillingness to say no. Then came the anger. "This is unbelievable. After everything we've done for you, we found you that nursing home. We made sure you were taken care of. And this is how you repay us?" I read that message 3 times, letting the absurdity of it sink in. They'd found me a nursing home, as if they'd done me a favor by storing me somewhere convenient while they spent my retirement. "You're being selfish. The kids need stability. How am I supposed to explain to them why we might lose our house? Because their grandmother decided to be vindictive?" Vindictive. Another fascinating choice. Protecting what little I had left was vindictive, but taking it without asking was just family helping family. The messages kept coming, each one revealing more than he probably intended. "Danielle is furious. Do you know what this is doing to our marriage? To our family?" "Fine, don't respond. But you need to know you're hurting your grandchildren. They're the ones who'll suffer because of your selfishness." There it was, the weapon every parent fears. The grandchildren, the idea that protecting myself meant hurting them, as if Frank's failures were somehow my responsibility to fix. I was scrolling through another string of messages when a voicemail notification popped up, not from Frank this time, from Danielle. My finger hesitated over the play button. I'd never heard Danielle angry before. She was always so carefully composed, every word measured, every expression practiced. Her social media smile, her polite distance, her subtle ways of keeping me separate from her family. I pressed play. Her voice came through the speaker, and it was nothing like I'd expected. Gone was the sweet, practiced tone. This was cold steel wrapped in venom. "Eleanor. Not Mom, not Mother. Eleanor. I don't know what game you think you're playing, but it ends now. You clearly don't understand the situation we're in. Frank has been managing your finances for years because you couldn't handle it yourself. That money you're so possessive of? Frank earned it by dealing with your constant needs, your guilt trips, your manipulation." I felt my breath catch. Was that really how she saw it? How they both saw it? "You want to cut us off? Fine, but you're cutting off your grandchildren too. Don't expect any more visits, no more phone calls, no more pictures. You want to be alone in that depressing little room? Congratulations, you'll get exactly what you deserve." The message ended with her breathing hard, like the rage had exhausted her. I sat there in the quiet of my hospital room, phone still in my hand, and waited for the fear to come. The panic. The desperate need to fix it, to call them back, to apologize and restore everything to how it was. But none of that came. Instead, I felt something closer to relief. She'd finally said out loud what I'd suspected for years. I was an obligation, a burden. An ATM machine that occasionally required maintenance in the form of a guilt visit. And now that the ATM was closed, so was whatever pretense of family we'd been maintaining. I saved the voicemail. Then I opened my contacts and scrolled to a name I hadn't called in almost 2 years, Richard Pemberton. The lawyer who'd helped me set up my will back when I still had assets worth protecting. He answered on the second ring. "Eleanor? Is that you?" "Hello, Richard. I hope I'm not calling at a bad time." "Never too busy for you. How are you doing? I heard you had a health scare." Word traveled fast in small circles. "I'm recovering, but that's actually why I'm calling. I need to update my will." "Of course. What changes are you thinking about?" I took a breath. "I want to remove my son as beneficiary, all of it. the retirement account, the life insurance, whatever's left in my name. I want it to go somewhere else." There was a pause. Richard had known Frank since he was a teenager, had watched me work overtime to put him through college, had probably seen this coming before I did. May I ask what prompted this decision? Let's just say my eyes are finally open. And Richard? I'm going to send you a voicemail. I want it documented. Just in case anyone tries to contest the changes or claim I wasn't of sound mind. I understand. Eleanor, are you sure about this? These kinds of decisions can be difficult to reverse. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. All right then, I'll draw up the paperwork. Who would you like to designate as your new beneficiary? I thought about Lisa, about the nurses who'd shown me more kindness in 5 days than my son had in 5 years. I thought about Rosewood and the staff who remembered my name, asked about my day, noticed when I was sad. Split it between the nursing staff at Rosewood and a scholarship fund for students at Riverside Elementary, the school where I worked for 30 years. I could hear Richard smiling through the phone. That's a beautiful gesture. It's not a gesture, it's gratitude, to the people who actually showed up. After we hung up, I forwarded Danielle's voicemail to his email. Then I typed a message to Frank. Just one line. The only response he'd get. I already gave everything. You just never appreciated it. I pressed send and felt the weight of 30 years lift off my shoulders. They took my kindness for silence. They forgot silence can be final. 2 weeks later, the doctors finally cleared me to leave. Lisa helped me pack the few belongings I'd accumulated during my stay. A book someone had left in the waiting room that I'd never finished reading. The slippers with rubber grips that prevented falls on hospital floors, a small card from the day shift nurses wishing me well. You're one of the strongest people I've met, Lisa said as she walked me to the transport van. I hope you know that. I squeezed her hand. I'm just finally learning to be strong in the right direction. Rosewood smelled the same as it always did. That particular combination of cleaning solution, cafeteria food, and the faint mustiness that comes with old buildings no matter how well they're maintained. But walking back through those doors felt different this time. I wasn't returning defeated. I was returning freed. The staff greeted me like I'd been gone for months instead of weeks. Mrs. Baker from across the hall shuffled over with her walker, her face bright with genuine relief. Eleanor, we were so worried. Are you all right? I'm better than all right, I told her, and meant it. My room looked exactly as I'd left it. The bed with its thin floral comforter, the single window overlooking the courtyard, the dresser with my few framed photos, though I'd been thinking about which ones deserved to stay there and which ones needed to be put away. I was unpacking my small bag when I noticed something on the floor near the door. A white envelope, no stamp, no formal address, just my name written in handwriting I'd know anywhere. The same handwriting I'd watched develop from crooked kindergarten letters to the confident script of adulthood. Frank. My first instinct was to throw it away unopened. Whatever was inside, I didn't need it. But curiosity got the better of me. Or maybe it was just the desire to see if he'd finally say the words I'd waited decades to hear. I sat on the edge of my bed and opened the envelope carefully. Inside was a single sheet of paper, filled front and back with cramped writing. His words tumbled over each other, urgent and messy, so unlike the careful, distant texts he usually sent. Mom, I don't even know where to start. I messed up. I know that doesn't cover it, but I don't have better words right now. Danielle left 3 days ago, took the kids to her parents' place upstate. She said she can't be with someone who can't provide stability. Funny how stability only mattered when it was gone. The house is in foreclosure. The business is done. I spent the last week sitting in an empty office, staring at furniture I can't afford to keep, wondering how everything fell apart so fast. But that's not why I'm writing. I'm writing because I finally understand what I did to you. Not just the money, though God knows that's bad enough. I took your whole life and treated it like a loan I never intended to repay. You were in the hospital, alone, and I didn't come. I didn't even think to come until I needed something from you. What kind of son does that? What kind of person have I become? I remember when I was 8 and broke my arm falling off the jungle gym. You left work in the middle of the day, rushed to the school, held my hand in the emergency room for 6 hours. You slept in a chair next to my bed that night even though the nurses said I'd be fine. When did I stop being the kind of person who shows up? When did I start measuring your worth by what you could give me instead of who you were? I don't have excuses. Danielle didn't force me to ignore you. The business didn't make me take your money without asking. I did those things because they were easy, and you never said no, and I convinced myself that made it okay. I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything. I know sorry is just a word, and I've probably destroyed any chance of you ever trusting me again. But I need you to know that I see it now. I see what I lost, and it wasn't the money or the house or the business. It was you. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even know if I deserve the chance to try to make this right. But if you're willing to talk, I'm ready to listen. Really listen this time. Your son, Frank. I read the letter twice, then a third time, slower, looking for the feeling that I'd imagined would come with words like these: the relief, the validation, the sense that finally, he understood. But sitting there in my quiet room, the paper trembling slightly in my hands, I felt only distance. The same distance you feel when you see a photograph of a place you used to live but can't quite remember living in. Familiar but foreign, meaningful but meaningless. For years, I'd imagined this apology, rehearsed what I'd say when he finally admitted his mistakes. I thought it would heal something inside me, fill the hollow space his absence had carved out. But healing doesn't come from other people's words. It comes from your own decision to stop waiting for them. I thought about responding, telling him I appreciated the letter, maybe even agreeing to meet, to hear him out, to give him the second chance he was asking for. But what would that accomplish? He was sorry now because his life had crumbled, because Danielle had left and the money was gone, and suddenly he remembered he had a mother. Was that remorse or just loneliness? More importantly, did it matter? I'd spent weeks in that hospital learning a truth that should have been obvious years ago. You can't make people love you the way you love them. You can't sacrifice your way into mattering. And you certainly can't keep giving to people who only remember you exist when they need something. Frank was sorry. I believe that. But sorry doesn't refill bank accounts. Sorry doesn't replace missed visits. Sorry doesn't give me back the years I spent making myself smaller so he could feel bigger. I folded the letter carefully, creased the edges the way he used to fold his school papers before bringing them home for me to see. Then I placed it in my desk drawer, underneath some old bills and outdated medical forms. Not thrown away, but not treasured either. Just filed away with other things that used to matter. Outside my window, the afternoon sun painted long shadows across the courtyard. An elderly man I didn't recognize well walked slowly along the path, stopping occasionally to rest on the benches placed every few yards. Another resident, Mrs. Patterson, tended to the small garden plot the home maintained, her hands working soil with the kind of peace that comes from having nowhere else you'd rather be. This was my life now. Small, quiet, mine. I waited half my life for that apology, only to find I no longer needed it. The announcement appeared on the bulletin board 3 days after I returned to Rosewood. Bright yellow paper with cheerful lettering that someone had clearly spent time making perfect. Annual Family Day, Saturday, 2 p.m. All residents and their loved ones welcome, refreshments provided. I stared at it for a moment, remembering last year's event, how I'd gotten dressed up, put on lipstick for the first time in months, sat by the window waiting for Frank to arrive. He'd promised he'd come, said the kids were excited to see the courtyard decorations. They never showed. At 4:30, I'd changed back into my regular clothes and pretended I'd forgotten about it entirely. Mrs. Baker appeared beside me, squinting at the notice. "Are you going this year, Eleanor?" "I think so," I said. "Are you?" "My daughter's bringing the whole crew. 5 grandkids. It'll be chaos." She laughed, the kind of easy laugh that comes from knowing you're loved. "What about your son?" The question didn't sting the way it used to. "He won't be coming." "Oh, I'm sorry." "Don't be." "I'm not." She patted my arm and shuffled away, leaving me alone with the bright yellow paper and its promise of togetherness. Saturday arrived with perfect weather, the kind of late spring afternoon that felt designed for gatherings. Warm sun, cool breeze, Flowering trees dropping petals onto the courtyard like confetti. By 1:30, the building was already transforming. The activities director had set up tables with punch and cookies. Someone had strung lights between the trees. Folding chairs appeared in clusters, ready for families to gather and take photographs they'd post online with captions about blessed moments and quality time. The first family started arriving just before 2. I watched from my window as cars pulled into the parking lot, children spilling out in bright clothes, carrying bouquets wrapped in cellophane and grocery store teddy bears. They moved with the easy confidence of people who belonged, who knew they were wanted, who didn't have to wonder if showing up was an inconvenience. Mrs. Patterson's room next door erupted with noise. Her 3 sons arrived together, their own children in tow. I could hear laughter through the walls, the sound of a family that actually wanted to be together. Across the hall, Mr. Baker wheeled himself to the common area where his son was setting up a photo display. Pictures from decades past, moments captured and preserved and now shared with pride instead of hidden in drawers. The hallways filled with voices, with life, with the kind of warmth that made Rosewood feel less like a storage facility and more like a home. I stayed by my window. Not out of sadness, but out of choice. I'd brought a book, made myself a cup of tea from the small kettle I kept in my room, and settled into the worn armchair that faced the courtyard. From here, I could see everything without being part of anything. The courtyard filled steadily. Residents sat surrounded by their people, faces bright with attention. Grandchildren chased each other around the garden plots, while parents tried half-heartedly to maintain order. Someone had brought a speaker, and soft music drifted up through my open window. I watched Mrs. Baker's daughter present her with a framed drawing, something one of the grandkids had made. The old woman pressed it to her chest like it was made of gold, tears streaming down her face while her family laughed and took pictures. In another corner, a young man knelt beside his mother's wheelchair, showing her something on his phone. Whatever it was made her laugh, a sound so pure and delighted that even from my window I felt its warmth. These were good people having good moments. Real connection, the kind that doesn't disappear when bank accounts close or businesses fail. The kind that shows up not because it has to, but because it wants to. I didn't feel envy watching them. That surprised me. A month ago, this scene would have shattered me. Would have sent me spiraling into self-pity and questions about what I'd done wrong, why I wasn't enough, how I could fix whatever had broken between Frank and me. But now, sitting in my quiet room with afternoon light spilling across my lap, I just felt grateful. Grateful they had what they had. Grateful I'd finally stopped chasing what I didn't. Grateful for the peace that comes when you stop performing for an audience that left the theater years ago. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. Lisa stood in the doorway, still in her scrubs even though it was the weekend. "Mrs. Collins, I saw your light on. Aren't you coming down to Family Day?" "I'm enjoying the view from here," I said, gesturing to the window. She stepped inside, concerned. "Are you sure? There's plenty of food. The activities director made those lemon cookies you like." "That's kind of her." Lisa moved closer, lowering her voice. "Your son didn't come?" "No, and I didn't expect him to. I'm sorry." "Lisa, honey, would you like to sit for a moment?" She glanced back at the hallway, checking if anyone needed her, then settled on the edge of my bed. "Just for a minute. I want to tell you something," I said. "A few weeks ago, this day would have destroyed me. I would have sat here crying, wondering what was wrong with me, why I wasn't worth visiting. But do you know what I feel right now?" "What?" "Relief. I'm relieved I'm not down there pretending anymore, not forcing smiles while my son checks his watch. Not making conversation with a daughter-in-law who's counting the minutes until she can leave, not being someone's obligation." Lisa's eyes glistened slightly. "You deserve better than that." "I deserve peace, and I finally have it." She squeezed my hand once before standing. "If you change your mind, come down. The lemon cookies really are good." After she left, I returned to my window. The party continued below, reaching its peak of noise and joy and messy, beautiful connection. But I didn't feel separate from it anymore. I felt like I was exactly where I needed to be. Later, as the families started packing up and saying their goodbyes, I walked to the small shelf where I kept odds and ends. In the back, wrapped in a plastic bag, was something I'd purchased weeks ago from the gift shop on the first floor. A small pot of lavender. I unwrapped it carefully, carried it to the windowsill, and positioned it where it would catch the morning sun. The purple flowers were just beginning to bloom, their color soft and soothing against the white paint. Tomorrow morning, I'd wake to lavender instead of emptiness, to something growing instead of something gone, to proof that beautiful things can thrive in unexpected places. No, honey, I'm exactly where I need to be. 3 weeks passed in a rhythm I'd forgotten existed. Mornings with coffee and crossword puzzles, afternoons in the courtyard with Mrs. Baker, who'd taught me to play gin rummy properly instead of the sloppy way I'd been playing for years. Evenings with whatever book I'd picked up from the mobile library cart that came through on Tuesdays. Simple days, quiet days, mine. The lavender on my windowsill had grown fuller, its scent filling my room each morning when I opened the curtains. I'd started taking photographs of it with my phone, capturing how the light changed its color from deep purple to soft lilac depending on the time of day. I was watering it one Thursday afternoon when someone knocked on my door. The nursing home director, Miss Walsh, stood in the hallway holding an enormous bouquet. Yellow tulips, at least 24 of them, wrapped in clear cellophane with a gold ribbon. "These just arrived for you, Eleanor," she said, smiling with the kind of enthusiasm people reserve for gestures they think are romantic. "Someone must be thinking of you." She handed them over and left before I could say anything. The flowers were heavy in my arms, professionally arranged, expensive. The kind of bouquet you send when you're trying to say something without using words. I carried them to my small table and set them down, staring at the bright yellow petals. There was no card visible, but I didn't need one. I knew exactly who they were from. Frank had always sent yellow tulips on Mother's Day. It had been our thing, back when we had things. He'd started in high school, saving up his allowance to buy me a single stem from the corner store. The gesture had meant everything then, this teenage boy remembering his mother on a day when his friends were probably sleeping until noon. Over the years, the single stem became a small bunch, then a full bouquet as his income grew. Yellow tulips for the woman who'd raised him alone, who'd sacrificed everything, who'd never asked for more than his happiness. I wondered how much these had cost, whether he'd paid with a credit card that still worked or if he'd scraped together cash, whether he'd ordered them online or actually walked into a flower shop and picked them out himself. Not that it mattered. I unwrapped the cellophane slowly, searching for a card even though I knew I wouldn't find one. What would it have said anyway? "Sorry? I miss you? Please forgive me?" Words he'd already written in that letter. Words that hadn't changed anything because words without action are just noise. The tulips were beautiful. I'd give him that. Fresh, perfectly formed, their petals just beginning to open. In another life, in another version of this story, they would have made me cry with gratitude. Would have been enough to pick up the phone, to bridge the distance, to pretend the past few months hadn't happened. But this wasn't that life anymore. I filled a vase with water from my bathroom sink and arranged the tulips carefully. They looked lovely on the table, adding brightness to the small room. Then I set the vase on the dresser, away from the window, away from direct sunlight. Mrs. Baker stopped by later that evening to return a book I'd lent her. "Oh, Eleanor, what beautiful flowers. Special occasion?" "Not really," I said. "Just someone trying to apologize." "Well, that's nice, isn't it, that they're thinking of you?" I looked at the tulips, their yellow faces turned toward nothing in particular. Sometimes people think about you only when it's convenient for them to feel guilty. She studied me for a moment, then nodded slowly, understanding without judgment. "Are you going to call them?" "No." "Good for you," she said simply, and shuffled back to her room. Over the next few days, I watched the tulips exist. I didn't change their water, didn't trim their stems, didn't move them to better light or adjust their position. I just let them be. The way you let things be when you're no longer invested in keeping them alive. The flowers started wilting on day 4. Their bright yellow petals dulled, edges browning, stems bending under weight they could no longer support. By day 7, they were completely dead, drooping over the sides of the vase like surrender. I could have thrown them out sooner, could have spared myself the sight of something beautiful dying slowly in the corner of my room. But there was something honest about letting them run their natural course, about not intervening, not rescuing, not doing the work that someone else should have done. The flowers had served their purpose the moment they arrived, not to bring me joy or earn forgiveness, but to prove that I could receive a gesture and feel nothing. On day 8, I wrapped the dead tulips in newspaper and placed them in the trash bin by the front entrance. No ceremony, no second thoughts. No lingering attachment to what they'd represented or who had sent them. Mrs. Patterson saw me tossing them out. Those were such pretty flowers. Shame they died so fast. Everything dies without proper care, I said, even good intentions. Back in my room, I looked at the empty space on the dresser where the vase had been. The lavender on my windowsill swayed slightly in the breeze from the open window, healthy and thriving because I'd chosen to nurture it. You can't water dead roots and expect them to grow. At some point, you have to accept that some things are meant to wilt, meant to end, meant to be thrown away so new things have room to bloom. Frank had sent flowers hoping they'd soften something in me, hoping yellow tulips would remind me of better days and make me forget the worse ones. Hoping a bouquet could substitute for presence, for accountability, for change. But forgiveness doesn't work that way. It's not about accepting pretty gestures from people who hurt you. It's about releasing the expectation that they'll ever be different and finding peace anyway. I didn't need to forgive Frank. I needed to stop waiting for him to become someone worth forgiving. Forgiveness isn't reunion. It's rest. Summer arrived without announcement, the way seasons do when you stop marking time by other people's schedules. The courtyard transformed into something almost magical, gardens bursting with colors I'd stopped noticing years ago. Roses climbed the trellis by the south entrance. Tomatoes ripened in the small vegetable plot the residents maintained together. I'd started joining the morning walking group. Nothing strenuous, just a slow loop around the property with 4 other women who moved at the same careful pace I did. We talked about everything and nothing. The weather, our aching joints. The mystery meat served every Thursday. Small talk that felt more genuine than any deep conversation I'd had with Frank in the past decade. My phone sat mostly silent now. No desperate calls. No angry texts, no voicemails dripping with guilt disguised as concern. Frank had stopped trying to reach me around the time the flowers died, which felt appropriate somehow. But I still saw him. Not in person, but in the way everyone sees everyone now, through carefully curated squares on social media. I'd thought about blocking him, removing that last thread of connection. But something made me keep him visible, the way you might keep a scar to remind yourself of a wound that healed. His posts had changed. Gone were the photos of the big house, the luxury cars, the family vacation snapshots designed to inspire envy. Now his feed was filled with motivational quotes about resilience and starting over. Pictures of himself in coffee shops with laptops open, captions about rebuilding and second chances. Sometimes you have to lose everything to find what really matters, one post said, accompanied by a photo of him looking thoughtfully out a window. I almost laughed at that one. He'd lost everything, true. But had he found what mattered? Or had he just found new words to avoid accountability? Another post showed up 2 weeks ago. A selfie with Emma and Tyler at some kind of park. The kids looked older, like they'd grown years in just months. The caption read, "Grateful for these two. They remind me what unconditional love looks like." Unconditional love. I stared at those words for a long time, wondering if he understood the irony. Wondering if he realized that unconditional love was exactly what I'd given him for 67 years, and exactly what he'd failed to give back. But I didn't comment, didn't react, didn't let him know I'd seen it. His life was his to rebuild or ruin. Mine was finally my own. The other day, Mrs. Walsh asked if I'd be willing to mentor a new resident, an 82-year-old woman whose daughter had just moved her to Rosewood after a fall. She was struggling with the transition, sitting alone in her room, refusing to come to activities. "You have such a calm presence," Miss Walsh said. "I think she might respond to you." Me, calm. 6 months ago, that would have been the last word anyone used to describe me. I'd been restless, anxious, always waiting for a phone to ring or a promise to be kept. Always hoping the next Sunday would be different. But now I was calm. because calm comes when you stop fighting against reality and start accepting it. I met with the new resident, whose name was Dorothy. She sat in her room with the curtains drawn, photographs of her family scattered across her bed like evidence of a crime. "They don't visit," she said without preamble. "My son came once to drop me off. Haven't seen him since." "I know," I said, pulling up a chair. "Mine too." Her eyes met mine, recognition passing between us, the kind of understanding that only comes from shared experience. "Does it get easier?" she asked. I thought about lying, giving her the comfort of false hope, but she deserved better than that. "It gets different," I said. "You stop waiting for them to show up and start noticing who's already here." We talked for an hour, and by the end, she'd opened her curtains. Small progress, but progress nonetheless. Walking back to my room, I thought about all the versions of myself I'd been: the young mother working double shifts to afford school supplies, the middle-aged woman taking out loans she couldn't afford because family comes first, the elderly resident sitting by a window, making excuses for absences that never got explained. And now this version, the one who waters lavender and plays gin rummy and mentors other women learning to live with disappointment. I'd lost my son somewhere along the way, or maybe I'd never really had him. Maybe he'd always been someone I'd created in my mind, a projection of who I needed him to be rather than who he actually was. That hurt to accept. Still hurts, if I'm honest. There are mornings I wake up and, for just a moment, forget that everything has changed. I reach for my phone expecting a text that won't come, planning conversations that will never happen. But then I smell the lavender, see the sunlight painting patterns on my floor, hear Mrs. Baker calling me for breakfast, and I remember that this life, this small, quiet life, is enough. More than enough. It's mine. The other residents ask about Frank sometimes, usually newcomers who don't know our history. "Do you have family?" they'll say, making polite conversation in the dining room. "They're busy," I reply with a smile that's no longer forced. And then I change the subject, because there are so many more interesting things to talk about than people who aren't here. Yesterday, I was sitting in the courtyard with my coffee when my phone buzzed, a notification from Facebook. Frank had posted again, learning that second chances aren't given, they're earned, working on being the person I should have been all along. I read it once, then locked my phone and went back to watching the birds fight over breadcrumbs someone had scattered near the fountain. Good for him, I thought. I hope he means it. I hope he becomes that person for Emma and Tyler, for whatever relationships he builds in his future. But it won't be for me. That chapter closed the day I closed those bank accounts. The day I chose peace over performance. The day I finally understood that loving someone doesn't mean letting them drain you dry. Now, when the sun sets through my window and paints everything gold, I sit with my tea and my lavender and my hard-won peace, and I feel something I haven't felt in years. Content. Not happy in the way people mean when they post smiling photos online, but content in the way that comes from knowing exactly who you are and refusing to apologize for it. I used to think growing old meant losing everything: your health, your independence, your purpose, your people. Now I know it means something different. It means finally keeping what matters: peace instead of chaos, dignity instead of desperation, the right to stop explaining yourself to people who never bothered to understand you. If anyone out there has ever been left behind by the people they loved most, I want you to hear this. You're not forgotten. You're not unwanted. You're not the problem. You're just finally free enough to stop waiting. And let me tell you something. Freedom feels a lot better than flowers that die in a week. So if my story resonated with you, if you've ever felt invisible to the people who should see you most clearly, drop a comment below. Tell me your story. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Hit that like button and subscribe, because we're all in this together, learning to choose ourselves when no one else will. Thank you for listening to an old woman's story. Thank you for letting me be seen, even if only through a screen. And thank you for reminding me that the best revenge isn't hurting the people who hurt you. It's living well without them.